It was possible, but it wasn't probable. And so therefore, it wasn't even close to what you'd call a fact.
Well, I call these the AIDS axioms. AIDS is contagious, AIDS is sexually transmitted, AIDS is caused by HIV, and that the anti-HIV drugs promote health and well-being. The reason I call these axioms is because they're assumed to be true. These four statements are assumed to be true. You cannot find the evidence in the scientific literature that shows that these AIDS axioms are indeed true.
Many human beings are not rational. They don't operate on logic, they operate on emotions. And that's exactly what those people are doing. They don't want to believe it, so it's not the case. But unfortunately, they are completely 100% wrong. There is no doubt that HIV causes AIDS. The scientific evidence is absolutely overwhelming. But if you choose to ignore it, of course, you can ignore it. Such is the power of the human mind.
There are no really good experiments that would lead anybody who was at least maintaining a healthy skepticism to believe that HIV was responsible for this series of, not series, but kind of a loose confederation of diseases that people are now willing to call AIDS, right? It's a confederation of maybe 30 different diseases, all of which have existed in one form or other prior to the condition that we call AIDS ever being pointed out, and all of which have had some other explanation at one time or other. You know, to say that all 30 of those are somehow caused, in at least some cases, called AIDS cases, by a virus called HIV, I think I haven't seen any evidence for that. I haven't even seen anybody trying to bring evidence forth for that.
And he said he's been looking for that since, I guess, the late 80s, and he hasn't ever been able to find anyone that can give him a paper that showed, number one, isolation of HIV, rigorous formal isolation of HIV, and secondly, using Koch's postulates, demonstrating that HIV is a causal microorganism. Where is the original paper that isolated HIV so that nothing else was present, and they actually could go and find what the proteins were and the nucleic acids were? I think you won't find that paper because it hasn't been published yet.
I mean, I understand there are a lot of people, if you ask them about HIV causing AIDS as being a fact, they'll say, of course, it's indisputable. And the very fact that they will say it's indisputable might lead you to question their ability to understand the scientific method. People that think any scientific fact is indisputable don't understand about scientific facts.
There's two types of antiviral drugs. One is the AZT style drug, also known as nucleoside analogs. What these drugs do essentially is they just kill cells. The other type of antiviral drug, these are the protease inhibitors, and what they do is they interfere with the activities of an enzyme called protease. Viruses, some viruses have proteases, but so do healthy human cells. Either style of drug, you give it to a human and you either kill or harm healthy cells.
The most severe side effect from HIV drugs, of course, like with any, would be death. But thankfully, we see it very rarely. Most of the antiretroviral drugs are very safe, and the most they cause patients is inconvenience with non-serious side effects such as nausea or diarrhea or bloating or gas. Irritating things, but not serious and not life-threatening.
Are you taking antiretroviral treatments?
Yes, I am.
How is that?
I don't know. It's still early. It's still too early to really tell.
In terms of the positive effect that it's having?
Yeah.
What are the negative effects that it's having?
Well, I lost a lot of weight, about 50 pounds, a lot of muscle mass, loss of appetite, nausea, lack of concentration, which are all like going away little by little. Sleeplessness.
And this was all drug-induced, do you think?
Yeah.
It's like my stomach always feels full, and most of the time looks full. It sticks out, and I can't really. There's no amount of exercise or anything that will like hold it in. and there's a lot of bloating and a lot of gas and like episodes of diarrhea.
I have friends that won't go out because they're on the drugs and because they might have diarrhea at any time, or they might start vomiting, or they might get nausea, or they got to stay home where the meds are, and they're like chained to this idea of the meds keeping them alive, but it's actually they're killing them. They're hurting their liver and kidneys and their hearts. Several of the people I know have died of AIDS, died of heart attacks. They call it complications from AIDS. It's complications from AIDS medicines. You can walk through West Hollywood and you can point out, you can see from the shrunken cheeks and the swollen bellies and the looks on people, you can see who's on the drugs.
I looked at my face a couple of years ago and I had this like gaunt look going on, and it became so pronounced that I would have a fold of skin here, and I noticed it, and it bothered me to the point where I went to consult with plastic surgeons as to I didn't ask what was going on. Just at the time I thought it was I was just aging really rapidly.
The other thing that I think the drugs could cause is some facial atrophy. Here were the fat pads on the cheek waste away. I'm not sure if it's caused by the drug or if just by getting older, but I have a feeling that it's caused by the drug.
We injected collagen, but then that was expensive, and then we did another procedure where we put some human tissue which came from cadavers, and it would just try to straighten it out. And I have little bumps on my back, little tiny things, but there's another syndrome where it gets redistributed on the back, and that makes me think we don't know what the long-term effects are. I feel like a human guinea pig.
And there's no question that these drugs have side effects. AZT was certainly not a panacea, but it's very clear that people, especially taking combination therapies, are doing well, and those are people who are taking the medications.
From scientific meetings, from these conferences, from my personal contacts with people in the field, I can tell you that I've found no evidence anywhere that people live longer, better lives who take these anti-HIV drugs, these protease inhibitors, either alone or in cocktails, as compared to a similar group of HIV positive people who do not take these drugs. So I do not know where the evidence is for the claims that you see in the New York Times or in the CNN or wherever you see it, that people are living longer, better lives as a consequence of taking these drugs.
I'm not saying that drugs couldn't facilitate death or morbidity. I'm sure that can happen, and people have had horrible side effects from some of these drugs. But to assume that it is the drugs that are killing people and not AIDS, I think is again, it's just not, it's not been proven out.
Infectious diseases are really very simple. It ain't rocket science. You've got a bug, you've got to poison the bug, it's destroying the body. So I think it's very, very unlikely that we'll successfully treat HIV without antiviral drugs. And it does seem to me a bit of a waste of time to try.
If you think about it, you put in a person making hundreds of thousands of new T cells every minute, an inhibitor of DNA synthesis, because the virus needs DNA to be replicated. But the virus is 10 kilobases and the human cell is 1,000,000 kilobases. You're shooting with nuclear weapons at bunnies. Yes, you probably knock out a few bunnies, but the forest doesn't look very good after your hunt is over.
I just want to read 4 things that you can find on the back of these drug ads, where the front has handsome tan men climbing up mountains in short shorts and smiling women and all this stuff. On the back it says stuff like, at this time there is no evidence that Zyogin will help you live longer or have fewer of the medical problems associated with AIDS. It is not yet known whether